So let's get started. All right, the She'ela, Genevas Das. I think that's what we're up to. Let me just double check. Right, we were talking about the fraudster taster. Okay, another form of deception, Genevas Das. She'ela, ma kavanas chachamim sha'amru sha'asur lignov das habrios. What do our sages mean when they say that you're not allowed to steal people's thinking? There's deceiving people. Is it included? Is it subsumed under the prohibition of stealing? So he says the tshuva is Masha Amru Chachamenu Zal Sha'asur Lignov Da'as Habrios. When our sages say that you're not allowed to steal people's thoughts, Kavanasam Bazeh Sha'asur Lahatus Es Chaver Kadei Sheyachshav Sha'asur Lo Eza Tova V'hu Lo Asa. You're not allowed to deceive people as such as an example to give people a person the impression that you've done him a favor when you really haven't. Okay? Even just using words is a prohibition. It is a Torah violation. It's subsumed under lo tignovu. You may not steal. Shahagonev es habrios nikra ganav. That when a person deceives other people, he's called a ganav. Watch your step, Moshe. Kamosha matzinu eitzel Yaakov she'amar leLavan vatignov levavi. Like we find that Yaakov said to Lavan that you stole my heart. Pirish b'targum Yonasan v'gunav daiti. V'chein matzinu eitzel Avshalom nemar b'shmol beis vayignov Avshalom es leiv anshe Yisrael. That Avshalom stole the hearts of the people of Israel, giving them the impression that maybe that he was faithful to his father when in reality he was not. Okay. Next, that was pretty straightforward. I find these to be a little bit more straightforward than what we're used to, a little bit more simplistic. Okay. Lihishtamesh b'chefetz sheheshiv hagazlan. Using an object that was returned by the Gazlan. She'ela madin Gazlan shenotal eze beged, ula'achar zman hitcharet vehechzer lo beged acher. So the shaila is, what is the din of a Gazlan who stole a garment? And then he had remorse and he returns a different garment. In other words, has he fulfilled his obligation? Yesh ladun ha'im ha'nigzal yachol lehanos mi beged zeh she'echzu lo hagazlan, o di yesh lachush de beged zeh shenasan lo hagazlan gazulu me adam acher. In other words, what if a gazlan replaces the item that he stole from me, but I have to worry that it was stolen from someone else? So this is an interesting shaila. Okay.
That's obviously have equal value, I guess.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
If the person agrees to it and it was stolen from he agrees and it's fine. How far do you have to think? Well, maybe he was stolen, or maybe where he slept last night when he stole that guy.
Well, the problem is this guy, it's a question of chazaka. Usually a person has a cheskas kashrus, that whatever he's giving you is not from stolen property. Here you're dealing with a known gazlan. He's established his chazaka as being a gazlan. So could that potentially mean that anything that he gives you could potentially be stolen property? So he writes, Gazlan shalokach beged b'itcharet al ma'asav, ala sha'oto ha'beged avad al machro. So the case is, of course, the Gazlan has remorse, and the garment or appliance, whatever he stole from you, has already now been lost or sold. And he gives therefore the victim, he replaces it with something else. If it's clear that it's stolen, right? In other words, it has all of the markings of being a stolen item, so then you cannot benefit from it. But if it's not definitively stolen, it's possible that the guy bought it himself, Even though the guy has a chazaka of being a gazlan, you're still allowed to benefit from the garment. And he writes, he says, there's an example in the Shulchan Aruch that if tax collectors, when we talk about tax collectors, these are like the sheriff of Nottingham, who go into people's homes and seize their assets willy-nilly. So, and then they return a different item to you later. Hare elu shalo. Why? You're allowed to keep them. Number one, if it is stolen, the owner has already had Yeush because it was relinquished to the sheriff. And number two, it's not certain that it was stolen. It could be that it wasn't stolen. So therefore, you can rely on those two things. Number one, yeah.
Can the owner say, I'm not satisfied with this replacement thing, and I insist on cash value? Since it's mucher for him to accept it, he says, I don't want that thing. No, I want my cash value. You don't have my thing, so give me cash for it.
So I think that in the laws of debt, whenever there's a debt, I don't know that a person has a right to demand cash as payment. I think in halacha, metaltalin can be given in
Value for value?
Yeah, value for value. And it is the option, it is the prerogative of the debtor to choose how he wants to pay for the debt. Now there are going to be he has to pay from his, I believe he has to pay from his idus, from the best items that he has, so that if this was to go to Beis Din could say, well, if you want to pay him with chattel, we have a right to go through all of your inventory of what you own and give him the best quality items of what you own. Okay. Next.
You give something that it's with a higher value, it's not considered a rebus that you are making like that.
Not ribis, because there was never a loan. There was never a loan made here. But it could be that if he replaces it with something of higher value, the victim can say to him, "What, you want me to sell it? You sell it and get the cash."
Or give me back the difference in value.
What do you mean, give me back?
If the item that he sold was worth $100, then he replaces it, but the item that he's replacing is worth more.
Like 150.
150, you say, listen, I'm giving you this, that's all I have. Give me $50.
I don't know. I'm not sure if in that case, the victim could turn around and say to him, I don't want to give you $50 cash for this item. I don't particularly want this item anyway.
Right,
So it could be in that situation I don't know for sure, but it could be, you could turn around and say to him, if you want to get $50 back, then just sell the item and give me $100 cash. She'ela mi shekana mehagana v'lo yada shechefetz zagana v'utzrach lachzir l'bala mesachefetz. So this is based on what we learned before, what was called takana sashuk. Person buys a stolen item, but did not realize that it was stolen when he bought it. And now it turns out that he has to return it to the owner. And the buyer is saying, but I paid $100 for this thing. And the original owner says, well, you got ripped off. Not only did the guy steal my appliance, but he sold it to you for a much higher price than what it's worth. Mahadin kishein edim lelokeach shekana b'mechir shutoin shekana me'aganav. Ma mechir sheyitztorchu shekana me'aganav. There should be a question mark there. So what will be the din when there are no witnesses to verify that that's what the buyer paid? Ma mechir sheyitztorchu l'shalim haba'olim lelokeach. And what is the amount that the original owner is going to have to pay to the buyer? We know that the owner has to buy back the stolen item, even though it's his. He's got to pay the buyer cash because of what we call takanas hashuk. So what is he going to have to pay? So the response is as follows: Tshuva. Bisman shahalokeach osadin in balabayas, v'zet toin sheshilim temur sachefetz laganav kach v'kach. So if the buyer now has to settle with the original owner, and the buyer is claiming that he paid X, let's say $100, the owner says, but it's only worth $75. And I'm prepared to pay you because I know that Chazal wants to make you whole, but I'm not obligated to pay you more than what the object is worth. Im ein edim bekam lokach, halokuach nishba b'nekitas chayfetz, bekam lokach, v'haba'olam mechuyavim litin lo kefi shenishba sheshilim temuras hachayfetz. So if there are no witnesses, then the buyer has to take a shavua while holding a Sefer Torah, and we don't do this anymore. We don't impose shavuas anymore today. And then he'll have to give him the $100. V'chein bizman shehalokeach osadin im haganav kagon shehuganav mefursam shelo asu bo takonas hashuk. And similarly, if the buyer is now making a reckoning with the ganav is caught, and the buyer now is entitled to get his money back, and there's no takonas hashuk here. Ve'ein haba'olim nostim lelakuach kelim elachozer halokeach va'osa dinim haganav. He says, let's say the original owner is not the one who's making restitution, but rather the buyer has caught the ganav. Kagon she'ein edim bekam economy menu esachefetz. So let's say there are no witnesses how much he paid. Hakona toin bekach v'kach lakachti mimcha v'haganav toin lo macharti lecha ela b'pachos mima sha'ata omer. Let's say there's a dispute between the ganav and the buyer. The buyer says, I paid you $100, and the ganav says, you only gave me $75. So hakona nishba benekitas chayfetz v'notel min haganav kefi shetoan sheshilei malav. So there too, the lokeach can take a shvua and then is entitled to the compensation of what he claims he paid. So there seems to be something incorrect here. First of all, we don't do shavua anymore with Nikitas Chayfetz.
Is that how it was done? You took a Sefer Torah,
You took a Sefer Torah or a Chumash, and you held it in your hand, and you say, I hereby swear in Hashem's name that this is what is owed to me.
So is that how in the non-Jewish courts, when you say raise your hand,
Absolutely.
that's where it came from?
That's of course, absolutely.
Yeah, but that's in those days they had fear of Hashem at that time.
Yeah.
What do they do today in Eretz Yisrael?
I don't think they do Nikitas Chayfetz anymore. I don't know why.
Someone like how do you make sure that the
We saw that in Rav Shraga's Sefer also. They don't do Nikitas Chayfetz and they don't do Shuvah. So I don't know why he's paskening this way. I'm not sure I understand why he's giving us this tshuva when this is not halacha l'maisa. Unless maybe some Sephardic Batei Din still do Nikitas Chayfetz and Shvuah. We saw from Rav Shraga that it's not done anymore, and this is common knowledge. Yeah, as far as I know.
You know, in court these days, you know what they do? They ask you if you want to make an oath on a holy Bible, on a holy book, or an affirmation, and then they say, okay, I want to do it on the holy book. And you say, okay, which one? The Old Testament, the New Testament, or the Quran?
All of the above.
Yeah, you can choose.
And that's the unraveling of Western civilization. Yeah, it is. It's completely the West is lost. Yeah, yeah. That's one of the signs. Yeah. Next, Gezelas Karka v'hahana'a mimena, stolen real estate and benefiting from stolen real estate. She'ela, Misha Gozel Karka, Imzem mituchum chavero umimakom shel rishus rabin. A person has stolen real estate let's say he's encroached on his neighbor's property, or he's encroached on a public area and sort of taken it for himself. Are you allowed to benefit from that house? In other words, let's say it's known that a
From
guy,
everything that they own.
no. A guy did an addition to his
It's
house
very common, but
and it actually encroaches on his neighbor. So I, as a third party, want to know, am I allowed to benefit from the stolen part of the house that he did an add-on
the
to?
stolen part could be a foot of land that they encroach.
I understand. So let's,
Really
well,
a-
no, not
That's-
necessarily. Not necessarily. Kagon shiyored geshamim v'nichnas b'toch gag habayis o shenichnas l'tochan b'rishus.
Okay.
You know, let's say it's raining and I want to just go under, I want to go in under the door, the porch, which is now encroaching on someone else's property. Am I allowed to do so?
This is so common. It's so-
Really?
Common here too.
Is it really?
Encroachments?
Yeah.
Surveys, oh, there's tons of litigation.
But hold on, does encroachment
People-
mean? like
People build over the survey, the boundary line and, extensions, to their house, garages, overhanging roofs, all kinds of things, that is over the property line.
But how do you get zoning for that? Get a license?
Well, they
for it?
don't.
They don't, they do it
It's-
illegally.
They do it erroneously, or they do it deliberately, or whatever it is, and then someone does a survey thing on a sale or something like that, you get a survey, you do the title search and all that stuff. And you find out that you got less or more than what you're supposed to get, and then all kinds of stuff happens, you get injunctions, gotta tear the fence down, you gotta, do whatever, you gotta, take the addition off, and then the zoning people come in and the bylaw people, and it could be a huge mess. It's a
In
disaster.
Israel, when you do your renovations, the people are funny there. We've experienced, I've seen with other people. They push the limit to what they can do, and people will call and rat on you that you've gone over because people always push it past the line. Like if you back onto a park, so this is what I just saw. Right across the street, they backed onto the park, they actually pushed their renovations, put their fence for their backyard.
Into
a
the
foot
park. Yeah.
Longer, and the park has been empty, it's just a park, who's gonna know? No one's gonna know. And it's not about if it's raining, it's
Right.
not no gay anything, it's the back of their backyard, it's nothing, it's just giving them more space for
More
their kids to
space,
play.
right?
This is so common.
But it's Geneva.
Well, clearly, it's Geneva, but,
Yeah. Yeah.
Geneva is that you're not paying tax, you're not paying Arnona there, your property tax.
But you're
That's
also, no,
Geneva.
but it's also you're depriving the public of a foot of their space.
I had a case years ago where there was a big commercial building that basically encroached on some laneway between that building and another building. And we were gonna sell the building, and the city found out about it. And they basically blocked the sale of this multi-million-dollar sale, saying that you're using our laneway, we want you to pay for it before we allow you to sell the property. And it was worth maybe $4 million.
Wow.
That whole thing, so they paid it. They
had no choice.
They had no choice, but that's how it happens.
People do renos all the time in Israel without permits, and it's basically stealing from Arnona. Or not just, even if you're not going over. Or when we did a survey on our house, to see the value of the house, it came in very low because when we compared it to what it was now, the people who bought it from had added on all these things. And it was like much bigger, and it's not on the plans of the city.
Wow.
This is so common.
And so do you have, so now your valuation, your Arnona was jacked up because now you,
No, which is a private survey, just for us to see.
oh, so you haven't submitted this
No,
renovation?
it wasn't
plans
something
to
that I
us?
had to. So there's another question. Now that I know, do I have to? Well, I have it. Maybe my Shiloh should be on here, But this is standard practice in so many areas. It's unreal,
Okay, so the Shiloh that's being put forward here is, does just the third party, is he allowed, am I allowed to benefit from that guy's encroaching property? So tshuva, asr lehanos mikarka gazula. Kigon sadeh gezula va'asr lavor betocha. You're not allowed to benefit from stolen real estate. You're not allowed to enter into stolen real estate. V'chein bayit gazul asr lihikanes bo b'chamim b'nei hachamo v'kshamim b'nei agashamim. If a house is stolen, you're not allowed to enter into it in order to get shade on a sunny day or to go in on a rainy day to prevent yourself from getting wet. V'chein im gazal eitzim ve'asa mehem gesher asr lavar al gesher zeh v'chein kol kayotze bazeh. And if a person steals wood and makes a bridge out of it, then you're not allowed to cross the bridge. So like imagine, let's say the mafia was involved in making the Verrazano Bridge, from what they say. There's a lot of bodies in the
Really?
in the bottom in the concrete
No,
pylons
people can't travel.
in the Verrazano Bridge. Yeah, so who knows if there was what?
Unless they are told.
Yeah.
I guess the same thing would be for someone that has a fruit tree in that area, you might be able to use to take a piece of fruit from a tree.
Well, that's straight out gazela, right?
No, if you're allowed to, just let the property that the tree was on is stolen, I'm saying.
Uh-huh.
Can say a bracha on a tree that is not yours. Say if you're in the park and you see a tree, now we cut it and not in.
Yeah, you can say
Right.
Birkat Ilanot on a tree that's not yours for sure. Yeah.
The stolen sukkah. Stuff that's been.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's very common.
Stolen sucker?
How do you mix that?
Oh.
He also quotes the Rambam as saying that if a king uses the Shulchan Aruch says if a king uses eminent domain and confiscates wood from a private citizen, then you are allowed to cross that bridge because Dina de Malchus Dina.
Even if it wasn't done, you just stole it from him, you just took it.
Mm-hmm. So, and then he writes over here, if you buy an item from using stolen cash, in other words, you stole cash, and then you buy an item. Das minchas panim b'simin mem zayin shemot lehanos miguf hachefetz b'hamocher yitva mimenu ma'os acherim. So one of the poskim says you're allowed to benefit from that item that was purchased with stolen cash. He says because the item itself was not stolen, it was purchased. And when you discover the victim of whose cash was stolen, the ganef has to pay him other cash. So he says that we'd have to say that that's only when you know that the Goslin has other cash. Because otherwise you'd have to reserve that item as payment for what he stole. Okay. All right. Next, she'ela. Maha hevdel ben Goslin leganav uvein Goslin laoshek. What's the difference between a Goslin who steals and what's the difference between a Goslin and a Ganav? And what's the difference? We've learned that before. And what's the difference between a Goslin and an Oshek and an oppressor? Shari l'chora kulam notlin mamon acherim shelo al pi hadin. Imkain hainu Ganav, hainu Goslin, hainu Oshek. They're basically all taking people's property that doesn't belong to them. So what's the difference?
Nothing Goslin has tomorrow.
Yeah.
Publicly, openly.
Right. So the tshuva is Goslin zelokech maman adam b'chazaka. This is a person who a Goslin is a person who takes a person's item in his presence by force. Higon shechotef miyadu metaltalin, like a mugger. He runs in the street and grabs a woman's purse, right? He grabs from a person their chattel. Or he walks onto the owner's property flagrantly in the middle of the day and just starts taking stuff. or he goes into the guy's field and consumes the produce. Yesh lo din shel gozel, kamo shenamar vayigzol es hachanis miyad hamitzri. Like he stole the spear from the Egyptian. It's when you take something by force. But that's only when you take it out in the open, without trying to conceal your action. But if you take it with stealth, so that the owner is not aware that you're stealing, that's not a gazlan, but rather a ganav. Like a pickpocket. Okay? So there's a difference between a mugger and a pickpocket. A pickpocket bumps into you on the street, says, "Oh, sorry, sir," and in the meantime, your wallet's gone. Aval oshek sha'amra Torah lo sa'ashok es reacha, but in oshek, where the Torah has a separate prohibition where it says, "Do not oppress your fellow," kigon shahaylo biyad chavero halva'a o pikadon o schirus. Where what's that halacha? Let's say someone owes you money. Okay, v'hu tovo v'enu yachol lahotzi mimenu shu olim v'kasha ve'al zeh ne'amar lo sa'ashok es reacha. That where a person refuses to pay back what he owes, and you have no way of getting it from him, that person is an oshek. In other words, he's not actively physically stealing, but he's causing you loss of money by not giving you that which you're entitled to. That's
blackmail. How's that?
what category would blackmail fall under? It's a form of gezela, I suppose. Although I'm not sure. I guess it depends. I don't know that all blackmail is the same. Is all blackmail the same? Don't, I'm going to tell everyone about such and such unless you give me this amount of money. Is that a form of geneva? I'm not sure if that would fall under the category of geneva or not. It's interesting. What would the prohibition? What category would blackmail fall under? Certainly, it's onas devarim. You're certainly harming a person with your words. So it probably would be usher from lo sonu ishas achiv, that no man may oppress his fellow. May cause him, verbal offense, right? And I'm wondering if the money that the guy pays is a form of geneva because he's giving it reluctantly. There may be something there also.
Most of the examples of all these questions, they're being called the gazlan. So that's because the guy's doing it openly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen one that said he's a Ghana, but we haven't had an example yet of Ghana. You should ask that before.
Yeah.
Because I know we did this.
Anytime you take by stealth, that is a ganav. And he says late. He says now here v'geter ganav kol halokech momon adam b'seiser ve'en haba olam yodim. A ganav is if you take a person's assets by stealth, where you do it unbeknownst to the owner. Like a pickpocket.
Or if you're in Sobeys and they give you back the wrong cash, they overpay you back the wrong cash.
So that's called right. So that's called hafkas halva'a. And if Sobeys, so here there's a distinction in halacha between Jews and non-Jews, but you still should strive to make a kiddush Hashem and give it back.
It's major Hilchos Hashem.
If they discover, like we saw brought down in Rav Shragan and other Svarim, especially if there's the possibility that they're testing you, they want to see how honest you are. Beizehu gazlan halokeach maman adam b'chazaka. Gazlan, by contrast, is if you take a person's money by force. Kagon shechataf miyadamos metaltalin. I don't know why he's repeating himself. This is so bizarre. So I'm finding that this Sefer has some flaws, some serious flaws in it. We'll keep on going, but he's just really just repeating himself in this paragraph. So let us continue. All right, we'll hold it here for today. We're up to page 16. I better make another.
There's a little bit of dimension.
I don't know. I am concerned about the reliability